Hello and welcome to another great IFT FinTech webinar. Today we'll be talking about why you should be building more integrations, not more product features. And we'll be digging a couple layers deeper into how brands like ING, Monzo, and Qapital use integrations to increase engagement. So hope you're having a great morning, an afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thanks for joining us. And without further ado, let's get started. I'm Linden Tibbets, IFT Founder and CEO. So a quick look at our agenda today. We'll tee up mobile-first banking, digital transformation, and the general idea that integrations are really something that should be thought of alongside product features on your roadmap. And then we'll look into the three distinct strategies that some of the IFT customers today, Qapital, Monzo, and ING are using to help grow engagement and ultimately increase savings and other activities that are both valuable to them and their customers. And finally, we'll take a couple questions from the audience, do a quick Q&A, and we'll wrap things up. So right out of the gate, one of the things that we tell all of our customers here at IFT, whether they're a consumer bank, a smart home product, or car insurance, is that digital transformation is more than just having an app. It's about a transformation in the relationship that your brand can have with your customers. And it's one of the easiest things to lose sight of, especially because in the digital world, everything is possible. You want to be everywhere. You want to be working with Alexa and Google Assistant on every app platform, on the watch platforms, in the car. It almost is this never-ending torrent of different things that your brand has an opportunity to be a part of. And I've seen so many different product leaders and CEOs lose track of the idea that digital transformation is ultimately a transformation in that relationship with your customers. And I think this is worth stating over and over and over again because in the world of consumer banking and fintech, it's really no different. And in fact, for years now, the world of banking has actually had an incredibly strong personal relationship with your customers. The move from your customers spending time in a physical retail location, establishing a relationship with a real person, coming back to that same person multiple times over the course of that relationship. As that all shifts, there's still an opportunity to maintain some of that. It's obviously going to be very different. But if you think about that relationship with the customer first, rather than the new next kind of shiny thing, the new platform that you can be a part of, you'll ultimately end up making some of the best decisions, both for your business and your customers' experience. And digging a layer deeper into that, one of the things that we see a lot of, no matter what your product or business is this kind of intention or desire to try to do it all, to be the proverbial Swiss Army knife, rather than here on the right, focusing on what you do best and really knock that out of the park. Do that the best possible way that you can and create the best possible relationship with that end customer, and also acknowledge that if you do your one thing really, really well, whatever that one thing is, and even in the world of banking, every brand can have a different way to think about that one thing. It's not that everybody that in the world of banking is doing the exact same thing. But if you think about that one thing in relationship to every other product and service in your customers' lives, then you'll actually, I think, be able to be much more creative with how that one thing shows up and creates value for your customers than you would be if you were trying to do a lot more things. So I think that's really one of the central points here. And regardless of what your strategy is, if you get back to digital transformation is about the relationship with your customer and this idea of focusing on what it is you do best, not trying to do it all, you're going to end up creating better customer experiences and better products. So one of the things that we've been so excited here at IFT just over the last year or two now is that this idea of digital first banking and mobile first banking has really taken off. And as part of that, and I think one of the drivers to that, is it allows digital banks to have a deeper relationship with their customers through integrations. And those brands and products that are thinking about integrations as a way to increase or improve that relationship with customers are the ones that we've seen have the most success. So these are some of those success stories here, headlines and articles for both, or all three, Monzo, ING, and Qapital. And we see one show up every other week or so now. So it's been one of the really kind of fun things for us here at IFT to watch our customers on this digital transformation journey get a lot of press and a lot of, I think, attention paid to how banking can be much more than just what most people think of when they think about their bank. So on to brands and the psychology of engagement. The IFT Data Insights is really a big part of helping our customers map out their integration strategies. I think it's really, really difficult when you think about the almost 650 brands on the IFT platform today. What are the small handful of those brands that are really going to move the needle for the type of engagement that's important for your business? And what we'll talk about here today are a set of stats around specifically engagements that's related to savings. And what you see here are four different broad categories of behaviors that drive users to save more. There's reward, punishment, habits, and then user-initiated savings. And this set of insights was pulled across over 75,000 users and almost 7.5 million different savings actions, money being moved into a savings account just in 2019 alone. And what we see here is that habits is far and away the biggest bucket. And habits are things like doing something on a recurring basis, either on a calendar or something when it rains or when there's specific weather outside or a change in seasons. Or when your location changes. But what's very interesting here is when you look across reward, punishment, and even user initiated, even though that's the smallest, there's really meaningful activity there. You add those all up, you get to about a third of all those savings actions in 2019. And so one of the big takeaways here is even as you find the 2 or 3 kind of needle moving integrations around your specific type of engagement, whether it's savings or something else, really not ignoring that long tail of other types of activities that drive that same engagement. Because who could say no to an additional 30% of something as valuable as savings, or if your business is targeting some other metric, that as well. On to our first customer case study here. Would love to talk about Qapital. Disclosure, I'm a longtime Qapital customer. Have used it to save for a number of different things. I think most notably the best vacation I've ever been on to Tokyo a couple years ago. Qapital was founded back in 2013. So even though they're a startup and a challenger bank, they're not just a new kid on the block anymore. They've almost got 2 million customers, and those customers have over $1 billion in savings, and they've been with IFT since 2018. And what makes Qapital's approach unique is they really take this behavioral science based approach when they think about increasing engagement and making their products more sticky and more engaging. And they really look at what their customers are already doing, as you see here from George, their co-founder and CEO, and they try to tap into those activities that their customers are already doing, things that they're already bringing into their lives, rather than trying to get their customers to dramatically change that behavior. And it's one of the things when you think about the IFT Connect product and the other things that our platform provides, this idea of insights and learning about what your customers are doing is really critical when you think about integrating with other brands. In the same way that you would love to know every little piece of information about how your customers are currently engaging with your products, IFT can help you learn all the things that your customers are doing outside of those products. And sometimes, to George's point here, that helps you build confidence around which of those products and services make sense to integrate with and really invest in, because they're places that your users already are. And I think that's a great point here. When you look across some of the most popular things that Qapital is doing with IFT today, some of the most popular integrations, and you can really see some integrations across those 4 buckets that we talked about back when we discussed the data insights: reward, punishment, habits, and user initiated. You find things like exercising with Strava, or even kind of punishing yourself when you don't sleep enough or you don't hit your step goal with Fitbit. Tapping into habits to this idea of really thinking about what your customers are already doing, tapping into habits around visiting some of your local favorite restaurants or stores with Foursquare. And then finally, using voice assistants like Alexa to create user-initiated savings moments outside of that app experience. Every one of these is a different integration with a different brand, but the end result is really the same. There's over 147% increase in user engagement for the users that enable one of these integrations with Qapital. And for Qapital, that engagement means users coming back to their mobile app. And there's a 73% increase in the amount of money that those users save on a monthly basis. That's really meaningful. And the way that Qapital is doing that is leveraging our new IFT Connect suite of products and APIs that allows them to present those integrations really as native features, as native integrations, as if Qapital had its own app store directly in their mobile app. And you see here some of the screens of a flow of a user connecting Fitbit to their Qapital app. And this is just an incredible user experience, and one that we here at IFT have spent, really years refining, doing user research and testing, and we've seen so many different really bad integration experiences. Integrating and authenticating is hard. It's not only is it something that users don't want to do. Who here on this webinar loves entering their username and password? Nobody. But also, almost confusingly, it's one of those areas of the product that once it works, people don't really go back to it. You don't see a lot of beautifully designed login and authentication experiences. Once they're workable, they're kind of discarded, and people's attention within the product organization kind of drifts somewhere else. And that's one of the big problems that we want to help solve in the world. And not just with consumer banking, but it's something that we believe so strongly in, is that if we can help brands make this integration experience repeatable, something that users expect and have a great experience doing, the end result is going to be products that work a whole lot better and are able to touch more parts of their end users' lives, and ultimately create a better experience for those users. So Qapital is doing a great job with this integration. Next on to Monzo. They were founded in 2015, so they, only 5 years old now, and wow, have they been on a rocket ship. They're also a challenger bank. They've got over 4 million customers. They get about 40,000 new customers every week, and they've also been on IFT since 2018. Monzo takes a little bit of a different approach from Qapital, and they've got what we'd call a community-based strategy. And you see this quote here from Sarah Matthews, their head of marketing here in the US, is that they use things like savings challenges that are much more social and much more community-driven to get some very similar results. But I think what's really interesting here is it's about how integrations can enhance or amplify that community-based strategy rather than take it in some new direction. You know, how do we help Monzo do more of what they're already doing and really kind of tap into a strategy that's been set even before IF got involved. So here are some of the some popular Monzo integrations across those same categories there. And you see here the results are pretty darn similar. They've got a 150% increase in user engagement as well for the users that have enabled at least one of these integrations through IFT. And you see here that community-based strategy really front and center. Things like Twitter, Foursquare, Facebook all show up, even though they kind of work across these 4 different engagement buckets. They're a lot more about getting a user's community or friends involved in that user hitting savings goals. And I think the one that has been most successful for them and that we've seen a lot of people adopt here, just from what we can tell here at IFT, is this idea of the savable, 1 penny savings challenge. And this is an example of really kind of communicating via Facebook, whether you're starting or stopping or you've actually completed this 1 penny savings challenge. And there's just so many different ways you can go with this. A different type of integration, an integration to something that's much more social than, perhaps Strava or Fitbit, even though those are also social as well. And really allowing Monzo to focus on what they do best rather than Monzo trying to create their own internal Monzo-specific social network. That's one of the great things about integrations is Monzo can really focus on being the best possible digital bank and know that users are going to continue to experiment and try different ways to build those communities. So really allowing them to tap into those communities via integrations. Next, let's talk about ING. They first introduced IFT to ING in Australia. They're the 5th largest bank. They've got over 2 million customers, and they've been on IFT since 2018. And I think what makes ING's approach so different from Monzo and Qapital, not only is ING a much more established brand, product and service, but they've really been able to use changes to their products and integrations as a way to extend an ongoing kind of brand building exercise that's really built around empathy and relating to their customers. And these are some screenshots from a commercial that ran with Isla Fisher there in Australia, highlighting some of the things that you can do with IFT and ING together. And in a way, this is much more about creating a emotional connection with your customers. It's less about the features or even sometimes the value of those features themselves, but instead of really trying to get by on just how great their product or their service is alone, they're focusing on creating that relationship with the customer in a way that is repeatable. This is an ongoing campaign that they've done now for years, and it allows them to use this set of integrations or product iterations that they're building to kind of extend that. And I think that's what's so interesting about it. It's not something brand new. The features are, the integrations are, but that relationship remains the same for them. Next, let's talk about ING's popular integrations across those same 4 buckets. And I think what's unique about ING again is they don't have an integration strategy that really stands alone. It's deeply connected to their ongoing strategy as it stands today. And because of that, they're actually able to mix and match. They're more interested in being a part of their customers' lives than some very specific way in which those integrations have to show up for those customers. So you see a set of integrations that look pretty similar to some of the integrations we looked at with Monzo and Qapital, but they're really able to kind of test, rinse, and repeat without having to go all in on just 2 or 3. And the end result here is actually very similar, if not perhaps a little bit more, 350% increase in engagement. And the way that they think about engagement is actually very different. And this is a good point here. Every brand, even brands within a very narrowly defined category, think about engagement in a different way. And I think that's something that's actually good. There is no real right way to think about engagement and about how your customers interact with your product. And the way that ING thinks about that engagement is very specifically about the number of times that someone saves in their bank account. And rather than focusing on the amount that they're saving, really helping people build a habit that's repeatable that they come back to, rather than depending on once in a blue moon a user deciding kind of out of the blue that they're going to save some money and save a whole lot at once. And that really brings it all back together. Again, we led with this idea of don't try to do it all, but instead focus on the one thing you do best. Really work to make that one thing world class. And if you can do that without having to worry about the ability for that one product or service to interact with and connect to all the other products and services that your users are adopting and trying out and have been using for years, then I think you have a lot more confidence to continue to focus in that area. And I think, I'll say this, with all due respect to some of those big tech companies out there like a Google or an Amazon or an Apple. I think they're very well-intentioned overall, but at the end of the day, they can get away with doing a lot of things. And because of the amount of data and the ease of integration that those platforms allow those businesses to really kind of think differently, I think it's an approach that ultimately is probably something everybody here on this webinar is concerned about. But I think there's a way for you to fight back, and that's to build a better version of that thing you do. However you define your banking solution, make it the best, and know that Apple, Google, Amazon, because they're doing so many other things, just aren't going to be able to compete. And if can help you worry less about integrations and platforms, we can really take the one key thing that those brands have that your brands don't, and really even the playing field. And that's ultimately what IFT is all about. We want to help you be the best possible version of the product and the solution that you can be, and think less about your ability to tap into all the other amazing things your users are adopting. So great. That brings us to the end of the presentation, and would love to take a couple questions from the audience like we like to do each time. If you'd please just type them in that GoToWebinar box there, and we'll try to pick one or two. All right, here's a couple coming in. Here's one that I think makes sense that we didn't talk too much about. So someone's asking, as a product manager, how should I be thinking about making integrations part of our roadmap? And I think to that I'd say, up until now, integrations had so much more baggage associated with them, relative to how you might think about a new product feature. And if you can really kind of list out that baggage as it relates to your organization, so it might be some kind of partnership that might have to be created, some type of research into an API and the feasibility of that API, the reliability of that API, perhaps some early experimentation or testing of that integration. If you could really cut all of that, kind of extra baggage out and really think about that integration just as an additional set of work, very similar to work that you've already done, I think it's going to be much easier for you to begin to slot those integrations into your roadmap. But I think it's really important because every organization is different. Really kind of looking at, okay, if you wanted to do an integration today without a service like IFT Connect, what would it take? And then evaluating, okay, with something like IFT Connect, once you've kind of gotten fully on board and done that initial kind of launch of your service, how much does it take to do an incremental additional integration? And I think, what we'd hope you find is that it's dramatically less work, 10% less work in some cases. And I think that'll really change the way that people approach integration. So first and foremost, really thinking about what does it actually take from a time and effort perspective, and doing a compare and contrast in terms of what it would take without If Connect and what it would take with If Connect. And I think you'll learn a lot of things along the way that'll help you better think about making those integrations part of your roadmap. Great question. I think the next one that I think is actually one I'd love to address head on, because it's one we get a whole lot in one form or another. And the question is, what are the risks associated with exposing our customers to integrations that are frankly, dependent on the reliability of other brands and services? And I think that's one that it's spot on, because if you're anything like us here at IFT and a lot of our customers, you care very deeply, not just about the quality of that customer experience, but the reliability of it. How often is it going to be available? How often is it going to go down or have some kind of problem associated with it? And to that, I'd say when you build integrations, you inherently are taking on some of that risk. There's just no way around it. Not everything can be up 100% of the time. In fact, I don't know anything that's up 100% of the time. And so you really have to build those integrations with that in mind. And not only just from a reliability standpoint, but also from a continuity standpoint. An integration is a bet on another business staying in business and staying around. And as you expose that bet to your customers, there's going to be some risk that's taken on. And I think that's one of the reasons that partnerships and integration strategies outside of some of the dominant tech platforms have been such a really hard, slog for a lot of companies. And because there's such an overhead and investment, both for your business and for your end users, I think people have been pretty hesitant. And that's one of the problems IFT is really hoping to help solve, allowing people to make smaller bets, but getting some of the same outcomes, and allowing people to really build those integrations in a way that degrade very nicely in some of those worst case scenarios. Say the business just completely disappears. Allow businesses to communicate to their users and continue to set expectations, even in some of the worst case scenarios, so that users come out of those experiences still feeling like their expectations were met. And that's the really key thing I'd say for any scenario in which something isn't working the way you'd want it to, or isn't as reliable as you'd want it to be. It's to really work to set those expectations with users up front. And when things do inevitably go wrong, coming back to that and making sure users are well informed and you're being as transparent as possible about what that problem is. That said, a big part of what we want to do at IFT is make sure that those types of problems are few and far between, and really work to hold all of our customers and the entire ecosystem accountable to the quality of those APIs and services. So it's something that we think is just right smack dab in the middle in terms of importance for people to gain confidence and actually invest in these integrations over time. Okay, with that wraps it up. We were able to take 2 questions there. I think those were great questions. Thank you all for attending. I hope, again, you have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world, and hope to see you again next time. Thank you.